2020, the hardest years of my life, and probably for many of you, were during the pandemic. I was an emergency doctor in the front lines, and I was scared. You see, back then, we didn't know very much about the virus, and patients were dying, but so were doctors. I didn't want to get sick and bring that home to my wife, and I didn't want to die. 2020 was a blur. Patients came in wave after wave. COVID had destroyed their lungs, and they were struggling to breathe. So I had to put a tube down their throat, a procedure called intubation, connect them to a ventilator to save their lives. And it was overwhelming. Some days, it felt like too much. Before COVID, we might intubate 1 to 2 patients a day. But during the surge, we were intubating 1 to 2 patients an hour. It was so much that some days I thought about quitting. But sometimes your darkest moments can teach you your most important lessons. And for me, that was the power of connection and what that means for the patient and also the doctor. There's a story that sticks out to me. An old man with COVID. He was struggling to breathe. COVID had destroyed his lungs, and all his major organs were failing. So I told him what I told many others, that if I didn't intubate him, he was going to die. Now, he had a wife, kids, grandkids. Of course he wanted to live. And so my nurses and I, we prepared to intubate. And just as we were about to push the medications, my junior resident doctor burst into the room, and she yelled at us to stop. The audacity. My nurses and I are horrified, because at that time, you do not open a COVID patient's room because you risk aerosolizing and spreading it to everyone outside the room. And I remember thinking, what is she doing? I'm trying to save a man's life here, and she's slowing me down. But I take a beat. I tell her to come in. Please close the door. And what's going on? She raises her hand, and in it, she's holding a phone. And she says, it's his son. Now, when you're saving a life, every second matters. And I needed to intubate this man stat. But I also knew, in my heart of hearts, that he wasn't going to live very long, even on a ventilator. And this might be the last time he would ever speak to his son. So I gave him the choice. And of course, he absolutely wanted to talk to his son. And as they were talking, he was calm and strong, even in the face of death. Because as a father, he didn't want his son to worry. And as they were speaking, everything around us seemed to fade away. The noise, the beeping, the chaos, and all that mattered was them. And at the end, his son says, I love you, Dad. And his father replies, I love you too, son. Those would be his last words. And let me tell you, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. There was not a dry eye in that room, and I had to fight back tears as I intubated him. That moment didn't just matter to him and his son, it mattered to everyone in that room. It mattered to me. We lost him shortly after, and it just goes to show you that this job is brutal. Don't get me wrong, I love my job. I love showing up and being there for you on the worst day of your life. But I need those heartfelt connections. That moment of genuine human connection that I had with that father gave me something I desperately needed during the surge. And that was the strength to show up and to keep trying and to keep fighting. Those moments define medicine, and without them, this job is impossible. We know that doctors save patients, but the truth is that through those heart-to-heart connections, patients save doctors too, just as much as doctors save patients. It's 2026 now, and we're still in crisis, but not because of COVID. Let me explain. When you're sick and you're dying, you come to the ED, which is shorthand for emergency department. We used to call it the ER, but now we call it the ED. And patients coming to the ED these days are sicker, older, and more complex than before, which means more of them have to stay in the hospital. The problem is that we don't have enough hospital beds, and so more of them have to wait until a bed opens up. taking up the same rooms that sick patients need. And so now the sick patients are stuck in the waiting room, sometimes up to 12 hours or longer, getting sicker, waiting for care. And it gets worse. EDs serving the most vulnerable, low-income patients are closing down across the country. And we call this the boarding crisis, and it's everywhere. The only way we can make space for new patients is for doctors like me to go faster and faster. And let me tell you, there's immense pressure for us to go as fast as possible. In fact, it's all we think about. And we even have a phrase for that. That phrase, it's move the meat. And who's the meat? You are. Your mom, your dad, your husband, your wife, your kids. I know it doesn't feel good to hear that, and trust me, it doesn't feel good to say it. It's dehumanizing. Move the meat is dark humor. It's gallows humor. Crude slang born out of the desperation, the pressure, the frustration that emergency doctors face moving as fast as possible to keep the system from collapsing. And you can imagine under that much pressure, we don't have time to connect with you. We don't have time for that life-saving connection both for the doctor and the patient. And patients can feel like numbers. And the ED can feel like a meat grinder. Now, this is not an accusation. This is a confession. Right? I was a part of that culture, and like many other doctors, I taught that. I taught young doctors to move faster, to prioritize speed, and to clear beds because that's the only way we could survive in a system stretched to its very limits. And let me be clear, the problem is not the people. Your nurses and doctors show up for you every day and give you everything they have to be there for you on the worst day of your lives. The problem is a broken healthcare system that measures care in speed, volume, and turnover. And the crazy thing is we have solutions to these problems, but meaningful change still hasn't happened. And this reality creates a tension that I feel every day. This tension between the care I want to give you, the care you deserve, versus the speed in which I need to practice. And that tension has a name. It's called moral injury. Moral injury happens when I need to practice, when I need to move in a way that goes against my core values, leaving me with feelings of fear and guilt and shame and this feeling that I don't deserve to be a doctor anymore. And moral injury is also a major cause of burnout. Not just for me, but for all my friends. In fact, 2 out of 3 emergency doctors are burned out, and experts think that number is actually higher. And studies show burnout doubles the rate of mistakes and increases the risk of suicide, especially for women doctors, almost double the national average. Now I'm going to confess again. I didn't ever think I would burn out. I loved my job too much, and I thought I was too tough. No, it broke me. And I didn't realize how broken I was until a fateful patient encounter. We get a radio call, a ring down. A woman has committed suicide. CPR is in progress, and I find out she's a doctor. Now, I don't know her personally, but knowing that she's a doctor makes it feel more personal to me. When she arrives, the paramedics are doing chest compressions. They are literally pushing blood from her heart and squeezing it to the rest of her body in a desperate attempt to bring her back to life. But I take one look at her and I know that there is absolutely nothing we can do to bring her back to life. But we have to try. We have to fight for her. And despite our heroic efforts, we have to call it time of death. That was a very traumatic moment for all of us. Everyone in that room had significant trauma after that. But you know what? The ED didn't stop because it couldn't stop. There were too many sick patients to see. And so nurses went back to their stations. Doctors went to pick up their next sick patients. It wasn't apathy. It's not indifference. It's survival. But me? Man, I'm shook. I'm shell-shocked because we have just lost one of our own. And the meat grinder keeps on churning. Her death struck me, it cut me deeply, because it forced me to confront a truth that I had been ignoring. You see, weeks before her death, I was out with my wife. I was trying to have a good time, but I was completely burned out and in complete denial about it. And as we're going down the subway, we're going through the subway, I see the bright, blinding lights of a train approaching me. And I remember thinking, man, how peaceful would my life be if I walked into those lights? Those thoughts lasted a few seconds, but man, did it scare me. Those thoughts scared me. I'd never had those thoughts before. And you know what else I felt? I felt shame. I felt weak. Because as an emergency doctor, I'm not supposed to feel that way. I'm supposed to be tougher than that. And so instead of confronting those feelings, I buried them deeper inside. I put my head down, and I went back to work, and I worked even harder than before. But seeing her death, it forced me to realize that I'm broken, and I'm not tougher than anyone else. And if I had been the one that died that day, the emergency department would have moved on too. Because this system is not designed to stop and to give us space to process. It's not designed for us to take care of each other. And I realized, in this system, you're the meat. And for the first time I understood, so am I. And so her death forced me to make a choice. Am I going to keep my head down and move the meat? Or am I going to use these painful experiences to inspire some type of change that I can fight for? But what can I do? I'm just a doctor. I'm not a congressman. I don't write policy. But I can tell my story, and I can tell the truth. And trust me, that did not come easy. It took years and years of looking inside and trying to find that courage. And when I found it, I made a film, and it's called Life Support. In this film, you see what I see, and you feel what I feel. The chaos, the pressure, and that need for connection. I could have never imagined that we would screen in 90 festivals around the world, and I also didn't expect what came next. I never thought that people, after our screenings, would come up to me and tell me their stories. Stories of grief, burnout, and also stories of hope. These were doctors, patients, and family. I heard from doctors who told me they were just as burned out and they could see themselves in me. And I also heard from a son and a daughter who shared with me the story about their father, a doctor who had killed himself. And I realized that by sharing my story, something powerful was happening. By sharing my story, the film was creating what sociologists call a third place, a space outside of home and work where we can connect and talk openly and honestly about our feelings and our stories without judgment. And that's especially important for doctors, because even now, mental health is still very much stigmatized. Doctors who need help don't seek it because they're afraid of feeling judged or having their careers destroyed. I know I did. And so only 25% of doctors that need help actually get the help they need, which means most of us are suffering in silence. The purpose of the screening was to break that silence and confront the source of that suffering. And my film team and I realized that through this outreach, doctors felt seen, patients and families felt supported, and conversations were doing more than just raise awareness. We were saving lives. And I'm in the business of saving lives. And so we created the Life Support movement, where we use art and film and storytelling to create a public record of what's actually happening in healthcare, to make it visible, because visibility is powerful. Let me tell you a story, the power of a story that you can see. In 1990, 60 activists with disabilities changed the world when they cast aside their wheelchairs, their walkers, and their crutches and dragged their bodies up the 68 stone steps of the US Capitol, some with only their arms. It was called the Capitol Crawl, and it forced the world and policymakers to see what the lack of accessibility looked like. It moved the hearts and minds of the nation and pushed policy forward. After a 20-year fight for inclusion, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in just 4 months after Capitol Crawl. That is the power of visibility. And when enough people see the truth, it becomes impossible to ignore. And we want our life support movement to be that third place for all of you, for patients and doctors and nurses, family, to share their truth. Where is healthcare breaking? Where is it broken? Where is connection being lost? And how do we change it? What has to change? I know when we're burned out, it can feel like we're breaking. But that same pressure that's burning us out can also become that impetus for change. And this talk is important to me. And for me, it's important to all of you. Because one day, every one of you guys, every one of you will be a patient facing a serious medical emergency. And on that day, connection will matter. You are trusting a doctor, a stranger, to save your life, and connection matters to me because as your doctor, that is literally what is keeping my humanity alive. It is the heart and soul of medicine. It's what I love most about my job. I still get emotional thinking about that father and son. It's been 6 years, but I still think about them. That moment of genuine human connection. My hope is that we can all work together to create a healthcare system that protects those moments because they're worth fighting for. That's my little girl. Her name is Sarah. And is she not a cutie pie? It breaks my heart to say this, but one day, baby Sarah is going to grow up. She's going to be a grown woman. And I'm going to be an old man. And one day, I won't be the doctor in the room. I'm going to be the patient, facing the end of my own life. And on that day, I need my doctor to connect with me. I need her to see. I need her to give the time, space, and compassion to see me not just as another number or as a piece of meat, but as a father who still has something important to say, so that my daughter can hear from the first day of her life to the end of mine that I love her. I love you, Sarah. Thank you.